What is the purpose of erasing history? Recently, I researched a critical question. What is the purpose of erasing history? The answer: to silence voices, to avoid accountability, and to control the narrative to manipulate both the present and the future. It is a tactic used by people in power to maintain or shift dominance. In an article that I read called "Making Sense of Erasing History" by justiceenverywhere.org, I read, "Erasing history is not a fight over remembering the facts. It is a fight over civic identity." Civic identity, the very sense of belonging and engagement within society. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what's at stake. In my first video series shown during Black History Month, I highlighted the historical practice of erasing the identities of the enslaved. Fast forward to 2025, and we are witnessing a modern version of this erasure. Arlington National Cemetery, a target for historical erasure. And why is Arlington important? Why does Arlington matter? Because Arlington National Cemetery is one of the most sacred military burial sites in America, honoring service members from every major war, from the Revolutionary War until today. Yet, despite its significance, Black service members and other marginalized groups have been systematically removed from its notable graves section. According to their website, it now reads, "We are actively working to update our website and educational program content in compliance with the executive order. No service member has been permanently removed. However, their names are no longer located where they could be easily found for centuries." Instead, Arlington now places Black history, Hispanic history, women's history under broad categories like prominent military figures and politics and government and science, technology, and engineering. Imagine visiting a website only to discover that the history that has always been there is now buried under layers of vague categories. What message does that send? In December of 1990, I stood on a tarmac at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, awaiting the orders to board an aircraft to deploy to the Middle East in support of Operation Desert Shield. I was a young non-commissioned officer at the time, tasked to lead 32 soldiers into combat. While I was waiting on the order to march my platoon onto the aircraft, I was approached by a woman carrying a baby. She was the baby of one of the young soldiers that was in my platoon. With her eyes filled with water, she demanded that I look her eye to eye. And then she said, "Promise me that you would bring my baby back home." I knew the request was greater than my ability to guarantee, but still, I looked her eye to eye and I replied, "Yes, ma'am, I will." And it was in that moment that I felt the weight of the Black American soldiers, leaders who had gone before me. Now, not only am I responsible to do everything within my power to make it home to my own family, I'm responsible to do everything within my power to bring home every member of my platoon. I'm responsible to their families as well. All of this was happening on the heels of the Army going through a reduction in force. And I remember the water cooler conversations consistently entertaining who we felt would be impacted by the reduction in force the most. Of course, our feelings were that it would be the Black soldiers that would be impacted. And although we had no factual evidence to support our suspicions, the uncertainty of the reduction in force, coupled with the deployment to war, left me feeling the responsibility of compartmentalizing my uncertainties and honoring the legacies of those soldiers who had gone on before me, my brother being one of them. I felt that weight. I felt the sense of something greater than myself. And I knew what it felt like to wonder if I was truly ready for this moment. But in spite of how I felt, the love I had within me for my family and for those I served mattered most. And I will never forget visiting Arlington National Cemetery in 2019. I remembered standing there looking at the thousands of headstones. And I recalled a question one of my friends had once asked me. He asked, "Why did you risk your life for a country that shows it does not love you back?" Then I recall wishing that I could ask the black service members buried at Arlington National Cemetery the exact same question. Now, I feel the need to clarify something. We know that not all non-black Americans fit into the category of those that do not love us. We know that there are thousands of non-black American citizens that view us as equal as themselves. However, for those where the phrase is applicable, if the shoe fits, wear it. The pattern of erasure continues. This is not an isolated incident. We saw attempts to erase black history at the Montgomery Bus Station Freedom Riders Museum, the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African American History and Culture, and a nationwide effort to suppress teaching black history in schools. Yet, one school teacher, when faced with a ban to teach black history in her classroom, decided to teach it at a local library on the weekend. And the last report I saw, the place was packed. And that's the kind of commitment we're going to need. So, what's the solution here? To replace what they erase. As aggressive as they have become at erasing our history, we must become twice more aggressive at replacing it. So let's start by unlocking black history, honoring some of those figures who have made monumental contributions to this nation, starting with General Colin Powell. He was the first black U.S. Secretary of State, serving from 2001 through 2005. He was the 15th National Security Advisor. He was the 12th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was a key leader during Operation Desert Shield. Next, we have the 6th AAA, the 68th 88th Central Postal Battalion, the only predominantly all-female battalion deployed during World War II, and they were led by Major Chastity Adams. They cleared a massive amount of postal backlog, supplying their service members with vital information and mail from home that increased their morale. The Tuskegee Airmen, the first black military pilots in U.S. history, who defended U.S. bombers with a near-perfect record. They paved the way for desegregation in the United States Armed Forces. The Navajo Code Talkers, Native American Marines who developed an unbreakable military code through the use of their native language. It was their contributions that directly led to victories during World War II. Yet, although their roles were classified, they were ignored for decades. Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson broke the Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947. He also ended racial segregation in Major League Professional Baseball. And you may ask, so why was he buried at Arlington National Cemetery? Jackie Robinson served in the United States Army at Fort Hood, Texas, now known as Fort Cavazos. But he was court-martialed by the U.S. Army for refusing to sit in the back of a segregated bus. Growing up, every time I saw a service member, they were being portrayed as a noble citizen. But every time I saw those images, regardless if it were in books, at a theater, or on television, the service member was white. Now, here we are, 2025, and a predominantly white group of decision makers gets to decide which black American contributions are deemed worthy of remembrance, without a black voice to champion our contributions even sitting at the table? I remember my brother talking to me about the heroic actions of black soldiers serving in Vietnam. In spite of the significant racial discrimination, in spite of knowing that they were being assigned dangerous combat missions disproportionately, and even in spite of knowing that they would face difficulties accessing their own benefits upon returning home, although they served with valor. Parents, grandparents, and educators, the responsibility is on us. If we don't teach Black history, no one will. At Unlocking Black History, we are here to make sure these stories are told loud and clear. So, how can you take action today? What's one small step you can do to fight back against erasure? There's multiple things you can do. It only takes a commitment. You can share information. You can donate to an organization that you align with. You can do like the teacher did and get involved. You can start by sharing my videos with your family, relatives, your friends, the next generation, all out of the very comfort of your own home. Listen, I am getting feedback from all kinds of people all across the country, and I know for a fact that fighting erasure is equally as important to you as it is to me. So I'm going to take the time to thank you in advance for not sitting back and staying idle. I thank you in advance for taking action. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.